Too Much Information is a production of iHeart Radio. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Too Much Information, the show that brings you the secret history and little-known fascinating facts behind your favorite music, movies, TV shows, and more. We're two guys with too much free time on our hands. My name's Jordan Runtagh.
And I'm Alex Heigl. And on this episode, we're voulez-vousing our way through the hit that taught countless dudes the one line of French they'd take with them their entire lives. The pseudo-timeless hit, Lady Marmalade. We're going to delve into Patti LaBelle's iconic original, The Assembly and feuds thereof, of the pop supergroup that recorded the Aughts version, and possibly the Uncanny Valley version of Kiss's I Was Made for Lovin' You that Ewan McGregor sings in Moulin Rouge. Now, Jordan, I know you have a history with Lady Marmalade. Why don't you go ahead and start?
My earliest association with Lady Marmalade, it was really one of the few songs that I could identify during the rare occasions that I went to middle school dances, because I basically exclusively listened to like Simon and Garfunkel 45s and stuff until...
Yeah, you were a man out of time.
Yeah.
So in a way, this was perfect for you.
This was great. Yeah, no, this was the one song that I actually felt like I could... I was definitely too much of a prude to actually like dance, but I identified with this during the middle school dances, so it was nice. And then years later, when I was a DJ myself and I was DJing like proms and weddings and bar mitzvahs and stuff, I'd throw it on whenever I needed to set the dance floor on fire, like immediately, and it killed every time. So I always have a really warm association with this song. But judging from early conversations we've had, I get the sense that Lady Marmalade, at least the remake, played a crucial role in your upbringing. Am I reading this right?
I mean,
you're visibly blushing right now. For those who can't see Alex right now, I'm sad because it's quite a sight.
I don't know how much we can keep from this, but I was like, 13 when this came out? This video was huge for me. I don't know, man. I'm like, we can get into this later, but I love Maya deeply.
Oh, she's from Philly too, right? You're a Pennsylvania boy.
I had such a crush on her. I mean, like, if you're a teen and you're seeing all of these beautiful women in like elaborate corsets and such and so forth, like constant. The other thing too is the saturation point of it. I mean, it was constantly on the air. Constantly. Do you not remember seeing this every hour on the hour?
I mean, I do, but I mean, this just goes to show you where my head was at. To me, it resembled more of like carnival circus vibes.
No. I'm so sorry.
And therein lies the difference between the two of us, I would say.
Yeah, and I mean, at the same time, I was also like a very weird person who was like invested in being an old man. And so this and Slash contributed to me wanting to own a top hat.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Which I wore to school in 8th grade.
Oh, you followed through on this?
Yeah, of course I did.
Oh.
I'm nothing if not dedicated, Jordan.
That is true. Wow.
Anyway, yeah, I'm in love with Maya, and this video directly contributed to me owning a top hat for several years. Now that you've learned way more than you wanted to about a 13-year-old Central Pennsylvanian's budding fixations, here's everything you didn't know about Lady Marmalade. Is it Lady Marmalade or Lady Marmalade?
I think it's Lady Marmalade. I mean, that's how they say it.
That's what I thought. That's how they pronounce it. Yeah,
right,
all right.
Yeah. So yeah, we can't talk about the Moulin Rouge supergroup version of Lady Marmalade without giving credit to LaBelle's classic version from 1974, with the legendary Patti LaBelle taking the lead. You gotta love it. It's truly one of the funkiest top 40 hits of all time, right? I mean, it slaps. Absolutely. Which is interesting because it came from maybe the least funky circumstances I could possibly imagine. False? Oh, okay. Well, hear me out. Lady Marmalade was co-written by Bob Crew, who's responsible, you might not know his name, but he's responsible for a ton of hits by Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. So the mind who came up with Lady Marmalade also came up with Can't Take My Eyes Off You, Big Girls Don't Cry, Walk Like a Man, Ragdoll, Bye Bye Baby, Let's Hang On, The Sun Ain't Gonna Shine Anymore, popularized by the Walker Brothers, that old doo-wop song by the Rays, Silhouettes, Silhouettes on the Shade, he wrote that too.
Here's the thing.
Oh yeah, tell me the thing.
Those songs, they all rip.
But they're not funky though. There's not an ounce of funk in any of... I love Can't Take My Eyes Off You as much as the next guy, but I don't know. If Wonder Bread could talk, it would probably sing Can't Take My Eyes Off You. I don't think it's a very funky song. So the fact that the I mean, to me, the fact that the same mind who came up with Can't Take My Eyes Off You came up with Lady Marmalade is just totally beyond me. But at least Lady Marmalade came from a somewhat authentic place because it was inspired by Bob Crew's visit to New Orleans, witnessing the sex workers on the street. Yeah, he claimed that the famous voulez-vous line was something that he heard them say, but there's also people who say that he cribbed it from the Tennessee Williams play A Streetcar Named Desire. I guess Blanche Dubois, the character, says it at one point. So jury's out as to whether or not he actually heard that on the streets of New Orleans or just took it from a beloved ninth grade English class play. But Bob Crew co-wrote this song with a guy named Kenny Nolan, who was one of his frequent collaborators. And Kenny actually recorded the original pre-Patti LaBelle version of Lady Marmalade with his proto-disco group, The 11th Hour. But the song flopped until Patti got her incredible vocal cords around it. That's a terrible way to phrase that. I'm a music writer, and I just...
Yeah, and as one does in New Orleans, like something like, what am I talking about? I don't have figures for this, but like 75 to 90% of the music that was recorded in New Orleans around this time went through Alan Toussaint and the Meters. Toussaint.
Give a little background on the Meters, because I feel like as popular as they are, I still feel like they've never gotten their due for the amount of music that they gave to the world. Really kind of behind the scenes in a lot of ways.
Yeah, you have almost certainly heard the song Sissy Strut in something. But yeah, founded in 1965 while they were in high school. And the Meters became the house band for Alan Toussaint and his record label. And C. Saint Studios.
Yeah, legendary studios.
Yeah. And these guys just worked. They were like the Funk Brothers. They were on everything. They recorded with, obviously, Dr. John. They recorded with Paul McCartney. Mick Jagger was like obsessed with them. He invited them to open with them in the 70s. So yeah, like you can't talk about New Orleans music without either Alan Toussaint or the Meters. And Toussaint was producing LaBelle, and he decided to record... He decided to record Lady Marmalade?
I think Bob Crew pitched him it, but I don't know where it came from, but I think it was Toussaint's idea to give it to LaBelle.
Yeah, so Crew brings it to Toussaint. Toussaint decides to record it for the LaBelle album Nightbirds. And so other than LaBelle on vocals and Toussaint on keyboards, and he arranged everything that he did the keyboards for. Genius arranger, genius piano player. And then 3/4 of the Meters are on this. Art Neville is playing Hammond, bassist George Porter Jr., and lead guitarist Leo Noccentelli, and a guy named Herman Roscoe Ernest III, who played with Dr. John. Do you want to do your Dr. John impression right now?
I mean, my only Dr. John impression is Robbie Robertson introducing him. Do you all know the doctor?
Yeah, sure.
Dr. John? Mac Rebenek?
Say thankfulness to the band and all the fellas. You know that Bonnaroo comes from a Dr. John song, right?
No.
Decitively Bonnaroo?
I did not know that.
Yeah, I think it's on the same album that Right Place, Wrong Time comes from. Anyway, the last sidebar about the Meters is that there's apparently... maybe apocryphally an album that the Meters worked on with Stevie Wonder that has never seen the light of day.
When was this? Was this during his run with Talking Book and Intervisions and Songs in the Key of Life? And that whole run?
Yeah, it's later 70s than that. I don't know. I don't think Stevie's talked about it. It's like one of those music journalist catnip things. It might be out there. It's probably, Stevie Wonder was recording God knows how much stuff at this time. So it's probably just in his basement somewhere. All
right, well, back to Lady Marmalade. The LaBelle version of Lady Marmalade succeeded where the earlier version by the 11th Hour had failed, not only because of Alan Toussaint's absolutely incredible arrangement and Patti LaBelle's just, incendiary lead vocals, but they tweaked the focus of the song to where the titular Lady of the Night was the focus of the song and not being objectified by the singer. So with Patti LaBelle's vocals, it became an empowering anthem. But it's apparently doubtful that Patti LaBelle ever intended it to be this. She later admitted that the group had no idea about the sexual overtones of the song. Speaking to The Guardian in 2015, she said, "I was very naive. I didn't know we were singing about a lady of the evening. Young girls today are so well versed because of the internet, so they'd never not realize. But it was different then. Thank God we did the song anyway. Amen to
There
that.
it is.
And she
Yeah.
took a very, very pro-sex work stance about the song. I guess some religious organizations were upset when the song was first released. And Patti's response was, this is according to a 2021 Billboard interview, well, a hooker has to make a living too. She don't take the mic out of my mouth, and I'm not going to take the mattress from under her. So you go, Patti.
She has a way with a soundbite.
She really does. Oh yeah, big time. Oh, she's the best. Apparently, she wasn't the only one connected with the song who was a little fuzzy on the lyrical content. Foreshadowing the Moulin Rouge version of Lady Marmalade, Maya used to sing Lady Marmalade around the house as a kid, not knowing what the French verse meant. But her mother, who spoke fluent French, I guess declined to tell her and let her daughter just belt the song around the house as a child. Network TV censors in the 70s were also really skittish about this song, which I didn't realize, because on TV they had to change the line in French to voulez-vous danser avec moi ce soir, which means do you want to dance with me? So even in French, you couldn't say on American TV, do you want to sleep with me tonight? Which is hilarious.
The scandalous lyrics did not stop this song from being a hit. It chopped the tarts. Jesus Christ. I had too much coffee today. That's why I was talking about the meters for 20 minutes. Lady Marmalade became a huge hit, topping the charts for 1 week in the spring of 1975 and staying on for 18 weeks. The success of the song made LaBelle the first black vocal group to appear on the cover of Rolling Stone.
That's insane to me. I mean, the Rolling Stone launched in 67. This was 75. That's I can't believe like the Jacksons didn't
It's a bad track record. It's really bad. It's like Bowie calling out MTV for not playing black artists.
Oh yeah.
Patti talked about this in that Guardian interview mentioned earlier. She says, we were groundbreaking and it was an honor.
This is talking about appearing on the cover of Rolling Stone?
Yes. We were groundbreaking and it was an honor. It was showing other black women that they could do it. But we weren't trying to break a record. We were just being LaBelle. I don't think at the time we thought it was special. We thought we were worthy of the cover, and it was something we should have had and we deserved it. But only when you look back do you realize how groundbreaking it was. Young black female groups gave us props. Destiny's Child did. TLC complimented us. They said LaBelle was one of the reasons they formed their groups, which rules.
It's crazy how groundbreaking they are. I feel like they kind of get glossed over in the history of, in music in a lot of ways. It's kind of a one-hit disco wonder, which is really not the case.
Yeah, and they were also one of the first contemporary pop group and the first black pop group to perform at the Met, the Metropolitan Opera House in New York.
Talk about well-deserved belated success for this group, because they've been kicking around since the early 60s. They've been doing it for 15 years. Did you know in the 60s, when the group was still then known as Patti LaBelle and the Bluebells, Sydney Birdsong was one of the singers, and she left to join the Supremes when Florence Ballard left in 67. And they just have this amazing track record. They toured England in the mid-60s, and they were backed by a teenage Elton John in his group Bluesology.
That slaps.
It's so good. And they kind of returned the favor years later. They sang on his album Rock of the Westies, one of his big 70s albums. And it was actually while they were in England that they got their second wind, going from Patti LaBelle and the Bluebells to LaBelle, the kind of funk supergroup that we know them as. Because by the late 60s and early 70s, their sound was kind of passe. They've been dumped by their management and they've been dumped by their label, Atlantic Records, apparently in favor of Aretha Franklin, which probably
sows the seeds. That'll come back later.
Yeah, Patti and Aretha Franklin kind of famously had a feud, basically duking it out for the title of Queen of Soul, really. And Aretha, really knew how to hold a grudge, because I guess she snubbed Patti LaBelle at the Women of Soul concert at the White House in 2014 by refusing to shake Patti's hand when she offered it.
Have you seen the video?
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's icy. I mean, they tried to downplay this for years, so, we won't dwell on this, but it's, I know you got a favorite part of this, don't you?
My personal favorite bit is reportedly, this is Huffington Post I found this at, but Aretha Franklin launched a line of food in answer to Patti LaBelle's line of sweet potato pies, which were...
Oh, Patti pies, yeah.
Yeah, huge hit at Walmart. And Aretha Franklin's pull quote when announcing it was, "Ms. Patti's gonna have to move that pie to the side." Which, Ugh.
I mean, were they actual rivals with like a burning, I won't say hatred, but like was there animosity there, or was it just kind of like, was there a begrudging acceptance of each other?
I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but Aretha could hold a grudge. She had a lot of feuds. She feuded with her biographer. I mean, that
David Ritz?
biopic. I think so. One of her biographers, she like had a whole big thing with him. I know that biopic was held up in years over like battling with her estate. Yeah, I mean, there's only one Queen of Soul, and there's only one Queen of Soul, and Aretha refused to cede that crown for decades.
She sang to me once. I met her.
Really?
Yeah, it was when I think it was one of her last albums, and it was like a covers album, and she'd done Adele's Rolling in the Deep.
Yeah.
And I asked her about it, and I mean, it was so funny because it was like meeting the Queen. Like beforehand, you were kind of briefed on, this is how you approach her, and you don't turn your back on her, and it's Miss Franklin, and
Yeah.
don't speak unless spoken to type stuff. I mean, she was great and wonderful, but I asked her a question about her version of Roll in the Deep, and then she just full-throated launched into it with my face 2 feet from hers. And it was just like, it was like a tsunami at close. It was unbelievable to be that.
This is ridiculous, but we both have a story about a legendary soul icon singing directly to our face. When I was working at People, I went to see Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings, and I was like front row, like a foot from the stage, and just obviously like riveted by her by the whole time. And if anyone's seen her live, like a big part of her act is pulling people up on the stage and like dancing with them. And at one point this is at like a book launch party. This was not at a big show. And at one point she looked directly at me and said, "You've been staring at me all night. I want you to get up here."
I've never heard the story.
Also, this is the first time I've spoken about it really publicly because it's such a secret joy for me. But yeah, she pulled me up on stage and like sang an entire song to me. She was like 5 feet tall. She was such a tiny woman and such a powerhouse.
What was the song?
It was a cheating song, and so it was very powerful to have her yelling this song at me. I just remember like I had earplugs in, and I could hear her like unamplified voice like on stage. She was so much force came out of that tiny little woman. I love Sharon Jones. God rest her soul. What a woman.
Yeah.
What a powerhouse.
So many great. I mean, I'm glad we're paying tribute to so many soul icons on this episode.
Yeah,
I'm glad. I mean, getting back to LaBelle.
Yeah,
I mean, this was
detouring back to LaBelle.
Late 60s, early 70s. I mean, they were kind of a throwback. They were still sort of almost look like the Supremes in gowns and the big bouffant wigs and stuff. And they were a cult favorite over in England because the Brits love their R&B. I mean, this was northern soul country where they would have all night raves of pure R&B. In the late 60s and early 70s, a lot of R&B acts in the U.S. that kind of had run their race or weren't really huge, like people like Geno Washington, would go over there and have these huge, be worshipped as, I mean, kind of like what Jimi Hendrix did. He kind of struck out over in the States and went over to England and was hailed as a genius. So a lot of soul acts from the U.S. went over to England and kind of had a rebirth. Dusty Springfield was a huge fan of LaBelle and convinced her own manager, a woman by the insanely English name of Vicky Wickham, to take Patti LaBelle and the Bluebells on.
Quite the sticky wicket.
Yeah. Yeah, try Vicky Wickham Sticky Wicket. Try saying that.
I'm going to start doing that for my vocal warm-ups before we record.
So it's when they're over in England that they kind of start going through their funk makeover, and they go from being Patti LaBelle and the Bluebells to just LaBelle, and they, start wearing like denim and kind of go through their, take off their fancy gowns and stuff and become this sort of funk powerhouse group that we know about. And they toured with The Who, and they do this incredible version of Won't Get Fooled Again, which is just insane.
So another thing about LaBelle is Nona Hendrix.
Yeah, while we're on the Hendrix train.
Yeah, exactly. Good segue. We're kind of not doing the segues well this show. We're just too excitable about soul icons. So yeah, the other members of LaBelle tend to get short shrift, which is a shame because Sarah Dash went on to tour with the Rolling Stones. She's also sang with Keith Richards and the Expensive Winos, Nile Rodgers, the OJs, David Johansen of the New York Dolls. But Nona Hendrix is a fascinating figure. She claimed to be a distant cousin of Jimi Hendrix, which is that ever proven?
I choose to believe. I didn't even look into it because I wanted to believe it so badly because LaBelle was a trio and she was definitely like, she inherited Jimi Hendrix's space funk gene. I mean, she was the chief songwriter of LaBelle and her song titles were things like Space Children and Gypsy Moths and Who's Watching the Watcher and A Man in a Trench Coat, parentheses, Voodoo. She's just got these it's so good. Just incredible songs, but her titles are so good. So Patti LaBelle was more of a soul traditionalist and Nona Hendrix was more into sort of these avant-garde things, and they really didn't see eye to eye, which is a big part of the reason that LaBelle split in 1976, just after the success of Lady Marmalade.
Well, Vicky Wickham and Nona Hendrix are longtime partners.
I did know that, yeah.
Yeah, but go on, hit me.
Yes, they split in a fairly spectacular fashion, according to Patti LaBelle's memoir, at least. And so I'm going to read this directly from Wikipedia, basically for legal reasons, because this is the only place that I've seen this story cited. During a show in Baltimore on December 3rd, 1976, Nona Hendrix wandered off the stage and into the audience at the beginning of Can I Speak to You Before You Go? Hollywood is the name of the song. LaBelle's stage manager was able to steer Hendrix backstage, but Hendrix locked herself in her dressing room and beat her head against the wall. She was removed from the theater in restraints. The band agreed to disband soon after the incident, ending 14 years together, which is a sad end, but they would reunite many times later on, thank God. But following the band's split, Nona Hendrix was in a Captain Beefheart tribute act, which I love. Makes so much sense.
Yeah.
I mean, her career is so interesting. Talk more about her career, because she's got a really interesting post-LaBelle.
Yeah, she collaborated with Laura Anderson, who did that Superman song, and that was her big hit. But she was, a well-respected New York downtown sort of avant-garde composer, vocalist.
Her and Lou Reed collaborated quite a bit. And
yeah, Gina Shock of the Go-Go's, Valerie Simpson of Ashford and Simpson, and an iconic songwriter in her own right. Tina Weymouth of Tom Tom Club and the Talking Heads, which rips. Tina Weymouth is one of the most underrated bass players of all time. Nancy Wilson of Heart. And then she reunited with Patti LaBelle. And she has a 1987 album called Female Trouble that has Peter Gabriel on it. Surprisingly, Prince, perhaps less surprisingly, George Clinton, and Mavis Staples.
Ooh.
Yeah, man. God, I love Mavis. I love Mavis Staples so much.
All respect to the Staples singers, and also all respect to all members of LaBelle, not just Patti, an incredible group.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with more Too Much Information in just a moment. So, it's the 70s. The years go by. Do the Wayne's World. Time is passing. Time is passing. Lady Marmalade gets covered a few more times. The Latin band leader Mongo Santamaria did a brassy instrumental version. Sheila E., famous percussionist who worked a lot with Prince, did a really elaborately rearranged R&B version in 1991. LaBelle's version of Lady Marmalade didn't hit #1 in the UK, but a version by the quartet All Saints did in 1997. So this song has had a history after LaBelle, but nothing compared to Moulin Rouge. And this brings us to the turn of the millennium. Baz Luhrmann was making Moulin Rouge the third and final installment of his Red Curtain trilogy, which includes his directorial debut, 1992's Strictly Ballroom, and then 1996 Romeo and Juliet, of course. Moulin Rouge is set in the 19th century Paris, and the whole conceit is that Ewan McGregor's character, Christian the Poet, sings the hits of the 20th century instead of poetry, which is a way of comically illustrating that he's ahead of his time and he's this genius. And
I haven't seen this movie since it came out. I remember hating it. Really? I'm not gonna lie. I remember it has the classic time-worn trope of Nicole Kidman coughing blood into a handkerchief to telegraph that she's sick.
Is that a time-worn trope?
Oh yeah.
What other movies has Nicole Kidman coughed into it?
Well, not Nicole Kidman, but someone is always like and then they pull away the handkerchief and it's dotted with blood.
It's consumption.
Yeah, exactly. That's how you know they're dying. Or they cough into a sink and there's blood in there and there's that's definitely a trope. Look it up. Read a book. And I distinctly remember him singing "I Was Made for Loving You," which I hate so much.
Do you want to talk more about
Full
that?
stop.
Is there?
No, nope. We're done.
Okay,
moving on.
Moving right along. The whole idea of Moulin Rouge was built on the success of the Romeo and Juliet soundtrack, which paired contemporary songs by people like Garbage and Radiohead with Shakespeare. And this was initially a very hard sell by Baz Luhrmann to the film studio, 20th Century Fox. When Baz Luhrmann was pitching his Romeo and Juliet adaptation, he, I guess, very memorably said to the head of the studio, "Oh, did I mention there'll be contemporary music? Hit records. More hit records than you can possibly imagine," which I'm sure the licensing people loved because that ain't cheap. I can only imagine what the budget was for Romeo and Juliet for the soundtrack, but it did great.
Records and you can, yeah. I'm trying to do an Australian accent. I'm failing.
But
more
I mean,
records and you. I'm sorry.
No.
Just keep interrupting you with my attempts at an Australian accent. I hate Baz Luhrmann. Not personally. I'm sure he's a lovely man. I think his movies are full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. I didn't grow up with that Romeo and Juliet movie. I didn't grow up with having a crush on Leonardo DiCaprio. I didn't grow up with this movie. I didn't grow up with Australia. What did he make after this? Yeah, I don't like him. I don't know. I don't know.
You may not like his Romeo and Juliet adaptation, but a lot of people did.
Yes.
The soundtrack went to number 2 on the charts in the States, and it made the studios, both the film studio, 20th Century Fox, and Interscope on the record side, trust Baz Luhrmann implicitly and gave him carte blanche to do whatever he wanted for his next project, which was Moulin Rouge. And the film is set in a cabaret / brothel, and naturally Baz chose Lady Marmalade to anchor the soundtrack. It's arguably the most famous song about a courtesan this side of Roxanne. New Orleans has that Creole vibe with the connections to France. It has the voulez-vous line. It's perfect. It's got to be a Moulin Rouge. And the songs that he uses in Moulin Rouge, they're so diverse. I mean, I don't remember what the total was of songs that he used, but it was some phenomenal amount that he weaved into the soundtrack there within the movie. And so he wanted to play on this for his version of Lady Marmalade. He wanted it to be sung by, in his words, an assortment of the greatest pop singers from each continent. And he says this in Billboard's absolutely stellar oral history piece that was published last year by Hillary Hughes. He said, "I wanted the greatest K-pop girl, the greatest European singer, the greatest American singer." And he wanted people from all over the world. And then somebody, very justifiably said, "Well, wait a minute, that sounds like that'll take forever to put that together. Why don't we just go with every different genre in the United States?" And that kind of became the idea moving forward. It was going to be like a musical version of the Avengers or the Fantastic Four. That's what they said in all these retrospective interviews. That was kind of the idea, was that it was just like all these forces coming together. Each performer of this kind of supergroup would represent their own area. You got Little Kim being hip hop, and Maya was R&B, and Christina Aguilera was pop, and Pink was, we'll call it rock. I guess more pop side too, but we'll call her the rock one.
Hey, Pink collaborated with one of my favorite songwriters of all time, Tim Armstrong of Rancid. So she's rock-ish.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Anyway, cue lightning-paced quick montage of a bunch of people on phones to assemble this dream team.
It's Ocean's 11. Imagine Soderbergh directed the assembly of...
And Missy Elliott going, "You son of a bitch, I'm in." It took 2 years to get this. For production, Baz Luhrmann hired Missy Elliott, who was 2 weeks away from releasing the epical Get Your Freak On. And, just another lovely figure in pop music with seemingly no one has an unkind word to say about Missy.
I've interviewed her. She was the sweetest. She was very cool.
Yeah, she seems so cool. She said later on
she was nervous.
To Rolling Stone. Yeah, when I hung up, I was like, oh, snap. What did I just okay? The record was so iconic, and so the pressure kicked in. She recruited assistance from a guy named Rockwilder, whose production credits I'm not super familiar with, but he worked with Redman, Jay-Z, Janet Jackson, and this is a great bit of synergy. He was in the studio next door to Missy working on Janet Jackson's All For You record when she got the call to produce Lady Marmalade. And it's basically the same track. We said a lot of nice things about Missy Elliott and everybody, but it's basically the same track. They kind of just bump up the bass. And are there record scratches in this? This came out in 2000. There have to be some wikis.
I'm sure. Yeah, this is in 2001. There's a lot of the wikis in there. I'm sure. Yes.
Yeah. So Maya, my beloved Maya, was the first member. Maya picks up the phone. You son of a bitch. I'm in. Because this was on Interscope, Jimmy Iovine was put up a lot. Was the money man behind this. He was the
Elliot Gould.
He was the Elliot Gould figure. So she was on Interscope, and she had Case of the X that had just come out, and she had worked with Missy Elliott, and she and Pink are both Pennsylvania girls. They'd worked with the same producers in Philly, and Maya later said, "I knew Pink when she was Alicia." And, you noted this. I felt this in my heart before you noted this. But for all of the other egos in this, Maya is the one that everyone loves.
Yeah.
She stayed friends with everyone.
She's
Little
the Ringo.
Kim, yeah. Little Kim herself, no stranger to feuds, would later say, "Maya's my girl." Not a compliment she gives lightly. And here we go. Here's the land in the whale, land in the big shark is Chris. No, whale. I mean like a big donor, like a. Oh God, cut that. I don't need people coming after me for that. Whale is like a big donor, like someone who gives a lot of money. Shut up. So Irving Azoff is Christina Aguilera's manager at this point, and as people were doing before the bottom fell out of the music industry, they were playing hardball.
I mean, Irving Azoff is a terrifying man. I mean, he was the Eagles manager, and no less a figure than Don Henley once said of Irving Azoff, "He may be Satan, but he's our Satan."
Love it.
And Don Henley would know.
Yeah, very true. But Christina loved Missy Elliott and also loved Little Kim, and so they got Little Kim in it, and ultimately they pulled Christina on board. And despite what comes later, these women were all really excited to work with each other. This is the era when a lot of them were just being pulled on to sing the hooks in rap songs or being paired in duets with boy band singers. So this was a chance for all of these four women to sing together. The song was being produced by Missy. There was a female choreographer, female costumer. And Maya said in an interview with Rolling Stone just last year, she said, "With men, you're kind of like the little sister and everyone's on the lookout. So you don't have the platform to be totally free. When I got with the girls, it was like a playground."
Now, I'm going to break some hearts with this revelation because I really like to imagine all four of them in the studio gathered around one mic, just like letting it rip, all having these incredible ad libs, singing this all together at once.
Yeah, of course.
That was sadly not the case due to scheduling conflicts. All the parts were recorded separately, and they'd worked out who was going to sing each verse in advance, but they wanted to record them all singing the entire song individually so they could isolate their vocal ad-libs. And this guy, Ron Fair, was tapped to act as a vocal producer for the track. He was then the vice president of the label Interscope, and he was tight with Christina Aguilera. So he's a boardroom, a high-profile boardroom figure at this stage, and he's brought out of retirement to produce the vocals. He's the Carl Reiner figure in this Ocean's 11. He's brought out of retirement to do what he does best, which is tweak the vocals for this Lady Marmalade remake. And he did this insane, Beautiful Mind style thing where he extracted 25 vocal ad-libs, which are like all the, stray oohs and ahs and vocal runs that aren't part of the main song. He extracted 25 of these ad-libs from each singer and then took two keyboards, which have 88 keys apiece, and had every key be a different vocal ad-lib. And then he would add these little vocal flourishes to the track with the push of a button. Repeat that in a way that makes more sense to people, Heigl, because that is insane to me.
I don't think he sequenced it. I think he just treated every single one of them like an individual sample, and because he was maybe a keyboard player or it just made sense to him, he just laid out every single and get you. I don't know. I'm gonna stop doing that. Every single one of them. So what's the 88 times 2? Neither of us are good at math.
172, something like that.
172 vocal ad-libs at his fingertips, and just,
and he played the main track and would just maybe punch him at random for all I know.
I like imagining like the Looney Tunes thing with Daffy Duck or like in Who Framed Roger Rabbit when Daffy Duck and Donald Duck are doing the Rachmaninoff.
The two pianos
thing.
Yeah.
Yep. That's how it took place.
He also participated in this incredible Billboard oral history, which if you haven't read, you should totally check out. He said that there were 13 days when he did not sleep. And this is a quote, "It was an absolutely holy experience making that record."
Yeah, I mean, doing that many vocal comps after 13 days will make you see God.
So good on Ron Fair for sacrificing his sanity to get those amazing vocal parts. All the weaving and the interplay, like it really sounds like they're all, I mean, not only in the same studio, on the same mic, it really sounds like they're all together. But unfortunately, Ron Fair helped sow the seeds of the feud between Pink and Christina Aguilera. They were, I guess, having a pre-production meeting, and this guy, Ron Fair, I guess, apparently, according to Pink, took a very standoffish approach. He was very much Christina Aguilera's guy, and I guess it was felt that he favored her, at least according to Pink. And she talked about this in her Behind the Music episode in 2009. Ron Fair, I guess, walked into the meeting without saying hello, and his first words out of his mouth were, "What's the high part? What's the most singing part? Christina's going to take that part." And it kind of came across as Christina just bullying her way onto the climax of the song by bringing this big shot label executive to the meeting who was clearly in her corner. And Pink, she says, at least telling the story, stood up and sarcastically said, "Oh, hi, how are you? So nice of you to introduce yourself." He hadn't. "I'm Pink. She will not be taking that part. I think that's what this meeting's about." And she later admitted from that point on, she became, in her words, the asshole of the meeting. And of course, Christina Aguilera did wind up getting that part, though, which, you know, was well-deserved, but it ruffled some feathers. But also, I mean, who else was going to get the climactic high note? It's not going to be
I'm
Lil' Kim.
sorry. I don't, I don't respond well to like ego or power plays, but Christina Aguilera is the best singer in that lineup by not a mile, not many miles, by like a light year. I mean, have you seen the she does a James Brown tribute at she does it's a man's world, I think.
Yeah.
And she does his like inward like high-pitched scream. I mean, the woman, yeah. I don't know why I'm still talking about this. Whatever. She's the best singer in that group by light years. I like Pink. I bear Pink no quarrel. But no, the idea that you would walk into any meeting where Christina Aguilera is the other singer and be like, no, come on. Anyway,
I think it was probably less quarreling with her ability and more the way that it was approached.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
But when the track was, I guess, almost complete, Missy Elliott wanted to take a reference mix home to listen to. And this was the days when the first CD burners were on laptops, and they couldn't get the burner to work. So instead, Missy Elliott called her own answering machine at home and just recorded it, the version of Lady Marmalade that she just finished, onto her answering machine at home so she could play it at home, which is a very 2001 solution to a very 2001 problem.
It's like when they went to record this one Bad Brains song. The lead singer was in jail for marijuana possession, so he used his phone call to record the vocals.
Oh my god!
They just like patched the phone in from the studio in, and it's on the record. It's on a song. What is it? Sacred Love. It's a Bad Brains song that HR recorded from jail, which rules. We could probably do a whole thing about songs recorded over the phone. I bet there's a lot of those. Speaking of that, Baz Luhrmann upset that they didn't use footage from this movie in the video. I don't know if you remember this era of soundtrack videos. The most indelible one for me is Kiss from a Rose by Seal, where you had him on like the Batman stage with his shirt rippling in the wind. So this is the era when if you did a soundtrack song, you cut the movie into the song. That was written in stone. And they hired a director named Paul Hunter, who has a CV that is just should be an MTV Greatest Hits video compilation. Honey by Mariah Carey. Hypnotized by Notorious B.I.G.
Another
one in a million. One in a million for Aaliyah. You gotta say it.
Another one.
I Get Lonely by Janet Jackson.
Another one.
Father of Mine by Everclear.
Another one.
Fly Away by Lenny Kravitz.
Another one.
Puff Daddy, Maze, J-Lo, If You Have My Love, TLC's Unpretty, D'Angelo, Untitled, which, man, that video made me feel some things. Will Smith's, why did you end this list with Will Smith's Wild Wild West? One of my most hated songs of all time. Anyway, this guy was A-Team. You, go ahead, you talked about this.
Yeah, there's a really interesting podcast I listened to called The Commissioner by a guy called Randy Sosin, and he was the music video commissioner, which I didn't realize was a real term, for Interscope and A&M, which was the label that was doing the soundtrack for Moulin Rouge. And he talks about going to see a rough cut of the film with Paul Hunter, the guy that they were going to get to direct the music video. And they were talking about what they were going to do for the video. And Paul Hunter, I guess, said, this movie's incredible. It's a real work of art, but I don't think I can use any of this for the music video. And as you said, at this time, music videos were basically an excuse to have another trailer for the movie. Mm-hmm. And so eliminating the film footage did not sit well with Fox, the studio who not only made the movie, they were putting up half the budget for the music video. I guess the record label Interscope was putting up the other half. So this was a $1.6 million video. And Fox were pissed that they were shelling out $800,000 and not having their movie directly plugged in the most obvious way. So they were really pissed.
Justifiably so.
Yeah. But you know who was really pissed?
Go on.
Baz Luhrmann.
Oh.
According to Randy Sosin, Baz Luhrmann was furious, and he took it very, very, very personally that they were not using his film footage in this music video. And to try to make amends, the producers had the actual red curtains that they used in the Moulin Rouge film shipped over from Baz's Australian home base at great expense to try to make it up to him.
And having said all that, we'll be right back with more Too Much Information right after this. You know who doesn't suck is Lil' Kim, another person I had kind of a crush on. Truly a rap pioneer, iconic video artist in her own right. She did not know she had to dance. She was not a trained dancer. She was a rapper. She had bars. She didn't dance. The shoot for this video, 2 days, March 17th and 18th at the LA Theater in downtown LA, which was downtown LA at this point was probably not a fun place to be. So it was made up, obviously, as anyone who's seen it 10,000 times, as we did, to resemble a French nightclub. And this is the first time that all of these women met face to face. And a film crew from making the video was there.
It's on YouTube. Check it out. It's so good.
So each one of the singers had their own hair and makeup people, both to, as the Offspring so indelibly sang, keep them separated, and to ensure that they each had their own distinctive look for the video. But they did use a consistent wardrobe costumer, Trish Somerville, who went go on to create the assless chaps look for Christina for Dirty, which isn't assless chaps redundant? Aren't all chaps assless? Because they're just supposed to go around the... She worked a bunch in Hollywood since then. She's done stuff with Fincher. She did Mank recently, and The Mod Squad, and also Leprechaun 3, because you got to pay rent.
I'm not familiar with Leprechaun 1, 2, or 3.
You don't really have to see past 1. I think it's Jennifer Aniston's, one of her first movies.
Oh, wow.
They used the same choreographer to keep all of the moves from woman to woman consistent, and that choreographer was a woman named Tina Landon. She started out as a Lakers cheerleader when Paula Abdul was the team choreographer, went on to go tour with Janet Jackson as a dancer on the Rhythm Nation tour. She would keep working with Janet. She choreographed the Janet and Velvet Rope World Tours. And she previously worked with Ricky Martin on the Livin' La Vida Loca video, which I don't remember having particularly good choreography. Although, I guess everyone in that video who's not him is kind of doing pretty impressive choreography in that. There's like Latin dancing in there, salsa dancing. So she had previously worked with Christina Aguilera on What a Girl Wants and the aforementioned Case of the X by Maya. And Tina gave each singer a prop. Pink got a chair, which I would have called the top hat her prop, but sure, fine. And this apparently was caused for a little bit of consternation because Britney Spears had just done the video for Stronger, in which she has a chair to great effect. And Landon had to go out of her way to say, Pink, this is going to be a different kind of chair situation. Maya got a whip, which she felt nervous about because her mom was on the set, which, yeah, I get that. Christina gets the long satin gloves that she pulls off. Apparently no one was happy with their props in this. Christina was like, you have to kind of convince me to do that bit. It worked
really,
out.
I mean, if somebody else gets a whip and somebody else gets a chair and you get gloves, that's not a prop. That's an article of clothing.
Okay, fair point. Little Kim was given cash and a chaise lounge. I don't know how to pronounce that.
I thought it was just Chase Lounge.
Oh, okay. Either way, she got this piece of furniture and was delivered wine and diamonds, which, as you so indelibly put it, is the two food groups. Anyway, as we alluded to at the top of this bit, Kim shows up and she doesn't realize she's supposed to dance.
Oh, that makes me sad. As somebody who hates dancing and is a that makes me really sad that she was like, what? Absolutely. I have to do this?
Yeah, it sounds terrifying. And choreographer Tina Landon recalls this moment when she first met the wrath of Kim. It's 8 o'clock at night. She's got dark sunglasses. It's my first time meeting her. She really wasn't happy about it. She struggled with the choreography just because that wasn't her thing, but I think the product says it all. You can't tell because she really worked hard. And this is interesting. Little Kim, this will interest you. Little Kim had sung the refrain of this song years earlier on a track she did with Lil Cease called Crash on You. And you can gitchy ya with the Marmalade was the hook she sang on that song. So I had no idea about that. That's wild. Go ahead. Moving on.
Despite the collaborative spirit between these strong creative women, the video was the scene of another incident between Pink and Christina, which kicked off a Cold War between them that lasted for more than a decade, many, many years. I mean, so many of these on-set flare-up things are played up in the press, but this one was apparently legit. Choreographer Tina Landon later said there was probably more tension between Christina and Pink than the rest of the group. In 2019, Little Kim also recalled, quote, a little tension on the set of the video. She said it was mostly because the four had never really met before, didn't really know one another. Randy Sosin tells this story on his Commissioner podcast too. So this little incident, this little kerfuffle is well documented. What basically happened was that each of the women filmed their solo dance spots individually. And while this was going on, Christina Aguilera stayed in her trailer all day working on her look with her glam squad and just generally getting in the zone. And this went on for something like 10 hours. Like, it was a long time. And when she emerged, just jaws hit the floor, because you got to remember, this is like Christina fresh off of her Genie in a Bottle era. And now she was dressed like Twisted Sister with the teased hair and the heavy makeup. So she looked amazing. She looked crazy, looked cool. By this point, Pink, who had done her part earlier in the day, she'd had a few drinks and she was still a little sore from that whole pre-recording session meeting where she thought Christina had gotten preferential treatment. And now she'd kept everyone waiting all day. And I think everybody else was kind of on the set, like watching everybody else. And she was kind of off on her own. So Pink was pissed. She had a few drinks. She got a little stroppy, to use the English term.
I don't think you can say that.
No? Okay. So while Christina was filming her part, Pink was sitting next to the director, Paul Hunter, and made loud comments. And precisely what these loud comments were, depending on who tells the story. Tina Landon, the choreographer, has claimed that Christina couldn't hear Paul Hunter's directorial comments, and Pink was just repeating them louder. And then Christina would snap, I was talking to Paul, one of those things. And I could see that being legit. Like, if you're on stage and you're stressed out and everybody's watching and you're missing something and the director's calling comments to you and you're asking him to repeat it, and somebody else, one of your fellow artists who's you're supposedly your peer is like yelling it back to you, that's got to throw you. So I understand that. According to Christina, and this is when she was on Watch What Happens Live in 2019, she claimed that Pink was just heckling her from the audience. She said, that's what she did back then. She was heckling me from the audience.
I mean, Pink did talk a lot of shit. She has that line in one of her songs that she calls out L.A. Reid. Remember, L.A. told me you'll be a pop star? Yeah, all you have to do is change everything you are. So yeah, I have no...
But L.A., I mean, maybe L.A. just sounds like L.A. deserved it.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying none of these things are true, but I have no trouble believing that Pink was like caught stirring the pot.
It probably started with her sort of trying to be helpful, and when she couldn't hear what the director was saying, repeating it back to Christina. Christina overreacted, and then Pink probably took it to another level and started being antagonistic. That's my guess.
We'll get to the bottom of this yet.
In any event, Christina left the stage, she left the set, she left the theater. Word was handed back from her people. She's not coming back today. She might not come back tomorrow. She's really not happy with how the production is going. She doesn't like to be told what to do by another artist, which is all fair. And Irving Azoff, her terrifying manager, was across town, apparently at an Eagles reunion show at the Staples Center. And he texted somebody on the set, the Interscope guy, Randy Sosin, good luck with your shoot tomorrow. We won't be coming back, which
Ugh.
For those of you not well versed in music industry rep speak, this is a giant middle finger. This is not good. So everybody decides to kind of let the dust settle and see if Christina would chill out, the next day after sleeping on it. Pink did her part by sending flowers to a bunch of people involved in the production and apologizing for getting a little rowdy the day before. Ultimately, Christina appeared on the set the next day. They let bygones be bygones. They filmed all the group dancing shots, which was fairly drama-free, and it looked great. Tina Landon later said in one of the many oral histories from the 20th anniversary of the film last year that came out, this one was in Cosmo, when we finally got to the dance section, the tension dissolved. They all wanted to do their best. They wanted to shine. No one wanted to be the weak link. The competitive collaborative spirit took over. So for years after the shoot, there were rumors of a feud between Pink and Christina, and they both got into it on separate occasions when they were on Watch What Happens Live with Andy Cohen. Pink went first in 2017, and she claimed that Christina tried to punch her at a nightclub, which she said was, quote, hilarious. And it is.
Yeah. There's that quote from around the time of the election, which is, it's impossible to fight anyone from Philly because they take fights as a compliment and the invitation to fight also as a compliment.
Yes, Pink is a Philly lady. Christina Aguilera was Staten Island. No contest.
Yeah, no. I mean, and I think Pink was kind of like a little more rough and tumble during her early days.
Oh yeah, she was legit. She was a fighter. I mean, I know Christina had that song, but Pink actually was. Anyway, Christina claimed that this never happened. She appeared on Watch What Happens Live 2 years later in 2019, and she said, I wouldn't swing on Pink. She can beat my ass, which is 1,000% true. And yeah, there were years of barbed comments between the two in the press and side eyes on red carpets and all that stuff. But they apparently made up when Pink appeared on The Voice in 2016, where Christina was one of the judges. And Pink shared a war is over tweet about it in 2017, saying that the pair had, quote, made amends. And she elaborated on this during her Watch What Happens appearance. Quote, we were super young and super new at the whole thing. I'm an alpha and she's an alpha, and I'm used to taking my altercations physical and she's used to having them verbal, and we're very different. Women have to learn how to support each other. It's not taught on the playground. Christina was effusive about Pink's talent and called her such a powerhouse and definitely paved the way, setting the precedent of pushing back if something didn't feel right. Apparently, the two recorded a song together for one of Christina's albums, but according to Christina, it didn't quite make the final cut, which I take to be rude.
That's a feud report for another day. The video's wrapped. They're getting ready to release this song on April 23rd, 2001, just a few weeks before the movie gets its wide release in mid-May. In 2001, Moulin Rouge was at a crossroads. But despite the fact, this is asinine, despite the fact that this song has four of the biggest artists of the time, one of the biggest radio stations in the country refused to play it. Jimmy Iovini's team brought the song to Z100 in New York, and they turned it down because they didn't want to play a cover song. So Apex Petty, they just truck across town to Hot 97, a hip-hop station, who obviously recognize what's in front of them and add it to the rotation. Phones explode. Marvin Berry is on the phone talking to his cousin Chuck about the new sound.
Holding up the phone.
And yeah. And
people are hanging out of windows, rolling down their car windows.
What's that song? I gotta hear it. We cut to the cigar-chomping executive going, get me Lady Marmalade. Z100 obviously recognizes their mistake, and they start playing it, and it becomes a world-beating success. It hits number 1 in June, stays on the chart for 5 weeks, 26 years after LaBelle's version had reached number 1. And so that makes Lady Marmalade the 9th song in history to top the U.S. chart performed by different artists. This is a very granular stat. The third airplay-only song in Billboard chart history to hit number 1 without being released in a major commercially available single format. So this is back when singles were a thing and you would release a single. Lady Marmalade not released as a single.
Why was it not released as a single? That doesn't make any sense.
I would guess rights issues.
Maybe.
Probably they didn't want to release a not part of the soundtrack album. After Try Again by Aaliyah and Shaggy. Remember Shaggy? His 2001 song Angel, which
flicking
sucks.
the mic. Shaggy.
Yeah. Didn't he collaborate with Sting recently?
Yes, a whole album.
Moving on.
Whole album.
Oh, yeah. God, that must suck. It reached the top spot in 15 plus countries, including the UK. Became only the third collaboration by individual female artists in history to hit number one, and the first ever song to top the chart with more than 2 credited female artists.
That's insane.
Unsurprisingly, contemporary critics were not kind to this remake. Entertainment Weekly called it cluttered. The Washington Post called it gaudy, which maybe both
are true, but that's what I like about it.
Yeah. Rolling Stone simply called it god-awful, and they would later retract that review as they are wont to do, which we have covered in Harvest, Led Zeppelin, etc. They did a 2021 retrospective piece about the Stone, and Rolling Stone writer Matthew Jacobs called it the most exciting multicultural partnership since Aerosmith and Run DMC joined forces for Walk This Way, which is a bit of breathless hyperbole I don't necessarily co-sign. Either way, enter from stage left, Patti LaBelle.
Critics be damned. This song took home 2 MTV Video Music Awards, both Video of the Year and Best Video from a Film, as well as the Grammy for Best Pop Collaboration with Vocals. The quartet performed the song on stage at each of these awards shows, marking the only time they'd ever perform it all together, which is a tragedy. I feel like they should have done a 20th anniversary reunion. Yeah. At the Grammys, they were joined on stage by Patti LaBelle herself, and I love this so much. She arrived at rehearsals carrying a clutch containing only hot sauce and a makeup compact.
God, what an icon.
Yes, so good. She actually had a brief snafu during the performance when her red chiffon gown got caught as she went down the banister of the staircase that they used as a set during the telecast. And Pink had to free it for her and also play it off like it was all part of the act, which if you watch that performance, you kind of don't really notice it. They do a good job of trying to downplay the fact that
they're professionals.
Yeah, that's true. All in all, it was a tough performance because, as Maya would later say, they're all in corsets, which constricts your diaphragm and makes it really tough to sing, especially to belt. But they all pulled it off like champs. And these days, whenever Patti LaBelle performs Lady Marmalade, she performs it with the lyrics that were amended for the movie. You know, she met Marmalade down in old Moulin Rouge. And that is just part of the legacy of this revamped Lady Marmalade. But you know what else was part of the legacy of this revamped Lady Marmalade? The Pussycat Dolls.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Pussycat Dolls. There was a bunch of oral histories that came out for the 20th anniversary of the song, and Baz claimed that Jimmy Iovine wanted to collaborate with him again and put a group together. And Baz told him they had to move on. He had to move on to produce Australia with his muse, Nicole Kidman, and everyone else's muse, Hugh Jackman. So he turned him down. But Jimmy turned his attention, as he is wont to do, to a burlesque dance troupe called the Pussycat Dolls, which date back to 1995 in LA when they had a weekly residency at the Viper Room, famously the club on Sunset where River Phoenix died. They danced to 50s and 60s pop standards and easy listening tracks by like Henry Mancini songs. And, they got a lot of grassroots momentum. They were featured in Playboy. They had bit parts in Charlie's Angels' Full Throttle and Pink's music video for Trouble in 2003. And old Ron Fair comes back into the fold because he and Iovine get their hands on the Pussycat Dolls and turn them from a dance franchise into a recording act. They bring in people like Nicole Scherzinger, Melody Thornton, and we get that song Don't Ya out of it.
Didn't they do Buttons too? Or Beat?
I don't know. None of this matters. Sorry. I'm not throwing that one to you. You just have to cold open into it.
Yes, I'll tell you what doesn't matter. The fact that Ed Sheeran wanted to do an all-male version of Lady Marmalade. No one
asked for this.
I mean, okay, taking it back a little bit. The Lady Marmalade remake helped craft the template for the sort of all-female supergroup streaming service bait stuff like Bang Bang with Ariana Grande, Jessie J, and Nicki Minaj, which was a great song. And also the slightly less great and significantly less successful Don't Call Me Angel from the 2019 Charlie's Angels remake, which had Ariana Grande again, Miley Cyrus, and Lana Del Rey. A lot of these songs I kind of feel like exist to game the streaming services by having all these big names on it. But some of them are pretty good. Like this Bang Bang one, I love that song a lot.
That's interesting.
In 2015, Rita Ora said she wanted to make... They've been trying to make Rita Ora happen for so long in this country.
Yeah, I know, right? Industry plan.
Yeah. But in 2015, she said she wanted to make a version of Lady Marmalade with the then new class of pop divas, including Miley Cyrus, Charlie XCX, who would have been awesome, and Iggy Azalea. This didn't happen, but she got sort of close with the 2018 all-star collaboration Girls, which had Charlie XCX, Cardi B, and BB Rexa. I have no memory of this song, but that's a pretty amazing lineup. A year later in 2019, Ed Sheeran said that his number 6 collaborations project was inspired by wanting to make an all-male version of Lady Marmalade with Ed himself, Justin Bieber, and Bruno Mars.
I would Bud Dwyer myself in an interview with Ed Sheeran if that happened. Actually, it's funnier if they're in drag, but they'd never acquiesce to that. Maybe Bruno Mars.
Ed would.
Bruno Mars is a computer program. He's a hologram. You can get him to do anything. I don't know if Justin Bieber would do drag.
I could see
He's
Ed.
pretty enough, but I don't think he would. Ed might. He's like
Ed with a whip.
Funny. He's funny. I'm putting that in quote marks. Ed Sheeran is funny. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. My God.
But for a lot of these retrospective pieces, I love how I'm just trying to steer everybody away from your anger right now with, it's okay, kids. It's okay, kids. Here, let's go get ice cream. In a lot of these 20th anniversary retrospective pieces, the people who participated in the Lady Marmalade remake were asked who they would want to make a new version of Lady Marmalade. And Maya, your one and true love, was asked who she would want to see do a Lady Marmalade remake. And she floated a drag queen edition featuring people like RuPaul, which I'm sort of surprised hasn't happened yet. Or maybe it has on Drag Race. Patti LaBelle was also asked, and she suggested Jasmine Sullivan, Halsey, Fantasia, and Jennifer Hudson. And her quote is, "It would be new divas killing it." And
that would be incredible. Yeah. Jasmine Sullivan's Hotels. That's a great record. Yeah. Halsey's got pipes. Fantasia's got pipes. Jennifer Hudson. I mean, that would be amazing. That's a great line. Trust Patti LaBelle to put together like a record executive's wet dream there.
Yeah. That should absolutely happen. I mean,
segue.
New divas killing it. Yes. That is truly what Lady Marmalade, the remake rather, is about. Divas killing it. More than a way to sell a huge movie, more than a precursor to Christina Aguilera's stripped look, more than a prototype for the pop cultural phenomenon known as the Pussycat Dolls. The song Lady Marmalade, and especially the video, are a celebration of strong, independent women coming together from all different backgrounds and all different genres, confident in themselves, their artistry, and their sexuality. It was a moment to be big. Big voices, big hair, big costumes, big personalities. As Christina Aguilera said in the Billboard oral history, it wasn't for anyone else. It was truly about celebrating ourselves as women. And she gave a similar quote to Cosmo. The message was awesome because every woman wants to feel good in their own skin. Every woman wants to own their sexuality, whether you want to put on a corset or not. And inclusivity and the collaborative spirit were brought to the fore in a time when the tabloids were really pitting women against one another. And Christina Aguilera and Britney Spears were just the most obvious example. The chance for women to work with other women, and not just the stars, but the choreographer, the costumer, and other creatives, this was huge. And Maya talked about this in the Billboard oral history. It was all about representation, too, because we didn't see that type of collaboration happening often, much less with women. I'd worked with so many male rappers or singers, and it was pretty cutting edge. So to be invited to work with women, and ones that I was a fan of and familiar with, I thought they were really amazing at what they did. I was fangirling the whole time. So please, think of all these points next time the DJ bumps Lady Marmalade at your friend's wedding.
Or you start thinking about buying a top hat. Thank you for taking this wildly digressive tour with us of Lady Marmalade, and we'll see you next time on Too Much Information. I'm Alex Heigl.
I'm Jordan Runtagh. Thanks for listening. Too Much Information was a production of iHeart Radio.
The show's executive producers are Noel Brown and Jordan Runtagh.
The supervising producer is Mike Johns.
The show was researched, written, and hosted by Jordan Runtagh and Alex Heigl,
with original music by Seth Applebaum and the Ghost Funk Orchestra. If you like what you heard, please subscribe and leave us a review. For more podcasts on iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.